This video is going to be brought to you by RapidX Gaming Chairs. If you spend literally all of your free time in front of a computer like me, you deserve something more comfortable than that rusty bar stool you've got. Head on down to rapidx.io and use the code Curios for 10% off your own chair, or follow the link in the description.
Hello everybody, Disciple here with Hearthstone Curios. Fan-made cards are always super fun to look at, and we've mostly focused on legendaries in our past videos, so today we thought we'd talk about something else, fan-made weapons. Now, some of these are a little bit broken, and some aren't quite good enough to see play, and others are somewhere in between, maybe even ready to be in the game, but they're all really cool designs, and it's always fun to think about how they could affect Standard. So let's jump right in and take a look at some of them. First up, it's Bottle, and while the name is a little lackluster, the card is actually super sweet. Doubling its attack whenever it loses durability is really flavorful, since shattering a bottle does make it sharper, and the ability is super sweet as well. With things like Deadly Poison, Captain Greenskin, and other cards that increase a weapon's attack or durability, Bottle could quickly be a weapon capable of one-shotting someone, and would definitely be a really strong card in a dedicated deck. This card would definitely be really powerful in both Wild and Standard if the support for it existed, and the design could definitely be something that would be cool to see Blizzard experiment with. Maybe at a higher mana cost to make it somewhat more balanced, since it would be a little bit harder to combo with. However, since weapon removal is currently very popular, with weapon classes like Shaman, Rogue, and Warrior being very strong, basing a deck around a weapon OTK would be a little bit trickier and mean that this card could potentially be a little bit more balanced. Up next, it's Rooted Wildhammer, a pretty sweet warrior weapon that explores some interesting design space. As a 5-mana 7/3 weapon, Rooted Wildhammer is obviously really undercosted, but it also does come with a pretty big drawback. You have to pay 4 mana to attack. Now, having mana costs on cards to use them or activate their abilities is a really cool concept, although one we'd probably see on a minion before we saw on a weapon. Still, this card is probably reasonable in a control warrior deck, although it would more likely be used for burst and finishing than removal itself, since Gorehowl would beat this card out pretty handily in efficiency. Gorehowl also suffers a lot less against Harrison Jones, although Rooted Wildhammer does have the lower initial mana cost, so it is better against acidic Swampoos in that regard. It's pretty hard to say how much play this could really see, and maybe tweaking the stats or the mana you have to pay each time would make it a little bit too good, but the overall design is really sweet and definitely something that we'd like to see experimented with in the future, either as activatable abilities or as costs that simply occur when you attack. Next up, it's Golden Spear, a hunter weapon designed to be really good against weapon removal. Now, the concept is pretty cool, but since a 2/3 weapon is pretty low impact, your opponent may not care too much that they can't just ooze this. Still, one thing you can do with this card, since the ability is a death rattle, is just pay 5 mana to equip this, and then equip another weapon like Eaglehorn Bow. Since Golden Spear dies with 3 durability, you essentially get to draw 3 cards for only 2 mana. Now that would be a pretty broken ability, although you can argue that it's somewhat balanced since it requires having this and another weapon in your hand to combo together. But ultimately this card would just be played in hunter decks as a form of card draw, and as a solid 2/3 weapon against aggro or for burst if you don't need the cards in hand or you don't have the other weapon to replace it. So the concept is definitely really cool to allow you to hedge some against weapon removal and giving hunters some card draw, which is where it currently suffers heavily. But overall, this ability probably makes more sense to put on a higher mana cost or a higher impact weapon, since it would discourage using it for just card draw and actually act as an anti-weapon removal weapon. Next we have Heartseeker, a pretty crazy 8-mana rogue weapon. Having a weapon that destroys a minion is super cool, and the fact that it gets attack equal to the minion's attack is really awesome design space. Unfortunately, this card is probably way too good in a lot of matchups, since for 8 mana you get to kill a big minion and get a huge weapon as well. And that's barring scenarios like them having a Cthulhu and you killing it and then attacking them for 20 plus burst damage and lethal. This is kind of balanced out by the fact that the card is really slow against aggressive decks and almost entirely useless, But unless the meta was so incredibly fast that you never see control matchups, then it's probably so broken in those matchups that it doesn't really matter. Overall, this is a really cool concept, but probably way too strong with its current design. Last, but definitely not least, it's the Corrupted Ashbringer, which is a really cool paladin weapon that both lets you discover a death rattle card and adds its death rattle to the Corrupted Ashbringer. This is really cool mechanically, since you need to balance out the minion you want with the death rattle you want on the Ashbringer, and there's a ton of crazy stuff you could do with this card. God forbid you discover a Keion forging with this card, since then you'd get another Ashbringer after the corrupted one, and then another one if the Keion in your hand gets played and then dies itself. This card is probably a bit too strong in its current design, since it kinda just destroys grindy matchups, but it's definitely one of the coolest designs that we've ever seen on a card, and letting cards discover their own death rattle effects is something we'd like to see in the future. Now, it's possible that the creator of the Corrupted Ashbringer intended to only copy the death rattle and not actually get the card itself, but since none of the existing Discover cards say add it to your hand, we have to assume with this current wording that the card would be added to your hand, and that's why we feel it's probably just a little bit too strong. Anyway, those are some sweet fan-designed weapons. I'd like to know if there are any cool weapons you guys would like to see added to the game and what you guys think about those ones. Make sure you check out the original creators of those cards, and we'll link them in the description since they do have some really cool ideas, and custom Hearthstone really does have an awesome community. That's going to be it from me. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and drop a like, and if you didn't, that's okay too. I'll see you guys next time.